talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And arriving slightly late to the party. Sorry, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to you listeners. Thank you for taking part in the poll. This is the 38th Political Unmuted. We strive on into the night. The team is all here. I'm just going to say hello to them. We'll get down because we have some huge things to talk about today, and things which will be of immense interest to you, I promise you. So we're going to go straight to... Okay, who's my favourite today? I used to do this when I was a school teacher. Stuart, you can be my favourite today. Don't get jealous, everybody. Moment of the week, Stuart.
Today is World Social Worker Day. World Social Work Day. So I just wanted to shout that out. My wife's a social worker. You know, they're often forgotten about when we talk about key workers and we're talking about, you know, pay rises in the public sector. We don't really give them the recognition they deserve. They do, you know, quite a lot for us, and they're often demonized in the media for some reason, you know. So big shout out for social workers.
A very stressful and distressing job as well. They need immense emotional strength to cope with that. Thank you so much. Yes, brilliant. It's going to be hard to top that. I'm just going to move around clockwise so there's no more favoritism. Laura, moment of the week.
My moment of the week this week was the Women's Banner Group put out a series of posts to coincide with the 6 p.m. vigil for Sarah Everard on Saturday, and we asked people to send us messages of support or messages of experiences that they'd had, and we one out every 2 minutes for a whole hour. We had more, but we couldn't put them all out, and I managed to speak to so many women about their experiences, and it was really devastating the whole day. It really took it out of us mentally and emotionally, but it was really just amazing to see so many women want to get involved in something and try and make a difference and try and normalize that conversation as well. It was a really special thing to be involved in, and I thank everybody for sending in their stories and everybody who wanted to talk it was really lovely.
That was the one where they were all holding the various signs up.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
the one.
Very powerful. Brilliant idea. Brilliant. Sam, moment of the week.
Yeah, I've got to have it as my moment of the week because it's had me glued to Twitter all day, is the impending by-election in Hartlepool. Now, it's an exciting moment for Labour Party activists because we're all thinking who's going to be next. But I think it is really important, and obviously I don't know exactly what's happened, but lots of people are joining the dots about what may have happened, and I just want to put
Sam,
it out there.
I saw this. You're gonna have to please forgive me interrupting you because I've seen everybody going on about Hartlepool. So do I take it the MP has resigned, and who was the MP? And can you explain to people who just actually know nothing of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So the MP was Mike Hill. He's been the MP there since 2017.
And he's Labour.
And he's Labour. And historically, as in over the last couple of years, he had previously had the whip removed while there was a sexual misconduct investigation into him. So the suggestion, the rumours are that this resignation might be linked to that. So I would obviously, if that is the case, which we don't know if it is, but if it is the case, we really need to ask real questions about how it was able to happen, make sure make it not able to happen in the future. We can't just shy away from it, confronting this, because this is one of our own. Powerful men do despicable things, and we need to make sure that we don't have any space for them in our movement or in our party.
I mean, I feel the need to just say that this is all alleged and speculation.
Yes.
We don't know yet. And sort of, you were talking in general terms about the theory of it rather than this particular person. I'm just saying that, ladies and gentlemen, just to keep
We don't want to get sued.
That's it. It's safe.
I would be very happy for it to be nothing related to that, and he's just got another job.
Sam wasn't speaking on behalf of herself. She was just saying that people are saying, which is sort of thank you, because and I feel that I suckered you into that to a degree, Sam. So I'm sorry, because I've just seen people talking Hartlepool and sort of and basically the message that I've been seeing is that Labour are going to find it very hard to hang on to this seat in consequence.
Well, this is the problem, is if you add together the Brexit Party votes and the Conservative votes from the last election, that is more votes than the Labour Party got. So if you take the Brexit Party out of the equation and all of those votes go to the Conservatives, then the Conservatives win. Hartlepool has the same challenge that all of us red wall seats have in terms of a Brexit voting population. So it is tricky. It is going to be really interesting to see who the party, who ends up becoming the parliamentary candidate. It's going to be really quick. It looks like they're trying to make the election coincide with the local elections, which is like 6 weeks away. So it's going to be a short, sharp shock. Obviously, I hope for the best. I hope every election returns a Labour candidate, but we'll just have to see.
I mean, it's really bad if they marry the by-election to the local elections, because you might as well not have a local election. It just follows the by-election. And we found this in 2017 when sort of they married the general election with the local elections, and sort of people changed their mind sort of in minutes. Sort of, well, that's looking really bad then. Thank you for that news. And yes, heck, but it was all go where you were working. And Paul, sort of, please tell us you got something more uplifting, less depressing and upsetting than the previous 3 moments of the week.
Yeah, so Spain's going to do something really interesting. They're going to try a 4-day week. To recover from everything that's happened with the coronavirus, what we know from looking at statistics is shorter working weeks keep more people employed with the same amount of pay. They have a different system to us. I think they have proportional representation, and they have a left-wing party have suggested this, and the centre-right government have said, yeah, let's run a trial, see how it works. So they're going to run a trial of a 4-day week in a certain area in Spain, and I think that's a real positive move. I think we should be working less. You know, the fantasy from the past was that that we were going to, like, you know, mechanization of the workforce was going to mean that we're all going to live these luxurious lives and we're only going to work a little bit. So capitalism found more work for us to do. So yay, go capitalism. You know, they get some box checking and stuff like that. Always delighted with it. Also, John, we missed out on positioning you, so yeah, that's better. Say it up. People can't see your chin.
So, I was always a chinless wonder.
That's it. Perfect.
Is that
Perfect.
better?
That's it. Yeah. These things that people don't see when we're setting up. So
they need to be able to see me floppy old skin on me chin, me neck there. So that's the first thing to go, you know. I'm sorry, people. We're just joking between ourselves, and it's most rude. Do you think that would be an idea? I mean, is this a possibility in Britain? Would it work in Britain, Paul? Have Spain stumbled upon a future for the United Kingdom?
I would just say on that, right? Okay, so over this crisis, we've seen where the money's gone. We've seen like there's been a massive investment from the Bank of England, and now it's awful because like the UK owes so much debt. 92% of which is owed to itself. It's owed to the Bank of England. What we're going to do, we owe ourselves some money. Don't know what I'm going to do when I owe myself some money. I'll just give myself the money. And then it's just a bizarre thing. So at least we're moving away from that household model. Now, of course, this would work. Of course, this would work. A lot of what we do is absolute nonsense. A lot of what we do is completely pointless. Loads of jobs don't add any value whatsoever. Why don't we start thinking about how to live our lives in a positive way and come out of coronavirus? A lot of people are pleased to get back to work. A lot of people are just desperate to get back to normal. But this isn't normal. This isn't going and flogging yourself at work just because you're bored of everything else and have no other freedoms. It's a little bit like when people in, you know, certain situations would be who without freedom would be really delighted to have a job sweeping a floor somewhere because it gets or going outside or tarring a roof or something like that. Let's start doing productive things in shorter amounts of time and having a bit more of a life. That would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Except hairdressers. We need hairdressers to work 7 days a week, at least for a limited period, sort of until they get us all cropped back to normal. But apart from that, sort of, yes, it's a very exciting prospect. And I just clearly retired just too soon to enjoy this brilliant step forward. Thank you, everybody, for your moments of the week. And thank you for an uplifting and hopeful one there, Paul. Now, let's hope our government may bear that kind of thing in mind. But now, everybody, back to serious.
Now it's time for the big story.
Just things, aren't there, where they take you by surprise. And who would have thought a week ago that we would have seen the scenes that we've been seeing? And something, just occasionally, something inspires a nation and something really big and happens. And you have to grasp that time and make it count and not just lose the moment. Laura, what am I talking about? Fill us in on the background. Tell us all about what's happened, and then share what you think about it.
Okay, so where to start? I'll start with Saturday. On Saturday, there was a planned vigil for anyone who's been living under a rock and doesn't know what's been going on. The vigil was to remember Sarah Everard, who was kidnapped and murdered, allegedly by a Met Police officer. On the 3rd of March, as she was walking home. The people who organised the people are saying protest, but it was it was a vigil slash protest. It wasn't ever meant to be sort of an angry protest. Absolutely not, given that we're remembering somebody who's been so violently murdered. And so the Reclaim the Streets group knew that because we're in a pandemic, that it might not be the best idea to go out. They might get into trouble. So they went to the High Court to ask for permission or to ask for the legislation to be changed to have a sort of an exception for protesting, as long as it is managed and socially distanced. The High Court didn't say no, but they said, you need to sort it out with the police. We're not saying no. If you can sort of sort it out amongst yourselves, then by all means. So it all went quiet a little bit. I mean, bear in mind, this all happened really quickly. This happened within a few days. They decided to go ahead. The strength of feeling was so strong that they felt that they couldn't not do it. So they met on Clapham Common. As I understand it, it was socially distanced as much as possible. I think there was a metre between people. And there's sort of a bandstand in the middle of Clapham Common, and there were women on the bandstand doing like a call and repeat sort of protest. I've seen some interviews with people who were there, and they said at that point, that was about 6 or 7 o'clock, everything was sort of going okay. There was a lot of emotion, lots and lots of candles and flowers, a few police officers dotted around, but it was okay. And then as the night started to draw in and the sun went down, more police came in. Although the nature of the vigil hadn't changed, there were no angry shouting or anything. It was just the same up for the whole afternoon into the night. And then the police stormed the bandstand and started dragging people away, saying that it was unlawful and they shouldn't be there. And then following that, more police officers came and started to go within the crowd, telling them that they needed to get home. Obviously, you'll have seen the footage. There was a lot of physical aggression used to drag these women away. And it's just, I've seen a lot of stuff. I'm not going to sit here and say all policemen are awful. They're not. My brother's a policeman and he's a brilliant one. But what I will say is that it's a failing on number one, the Home Office, who should have maybe planned ahead and thought about protests. You know, it was fine to lift a travel ban when their rich friends needed to go to work and do an exemption for that. But also, you know, what do the optics look like? A bunch of women coming together to remember a woman who was violently murdered by potentially a police officer, for then police officers to go in with all their physicality to get women out. The optics of that looked really bad, and of course it was going to look awful in the news. And so yeah, it's just really, it's been all that's been on the news, and there's been conversations that perhaps it wouldn't have been what Sarah would have wanted. Yes. And maybe her family wouldn't have wanted that. I can't imagine what they were going through, seeing all those scenes. I mean, there was a lot of love there for her. There was thousands of flowers and people really remembering the woman that she was. But also, I think the whole situation's really started conversations. Like I said earlier in my moment of the week, the Women's Banner Group have started having these conversations with women. A lot of these women have never, ever spoken about their experiences. And this is sort of starting that conversation, and actually every single woman has had an experience of some sort, and I feel like I can, having not met every woman in the world, I still feel like I can quite happily say that has had some experience where they've felt scared or intimidated or have been physically attacked. You know, there's a whole spectrum of things, of inappropriate behaviour that shouldn't be allowed, to the point where that day a woman was flashed by somebody on her way home from the vigil. She was visibly upset, went to one of the police officers to report it, and he said, "Look, love, we've had enough, not tonight." You know, so these police officers who were there to
Do you
protect.
think? I mean, so one of the accusations is that the Met may be institutionally misogynist. I mean, do you think that there is any kind of grounds for that accusation? When you tell us that story, it's looking as though there's grounds for that accusation. What's your comment about the wider issue there?
I mean, I think it certainly needs looking into. They're not doing themselves any favors, are they? I think, you know, the alleged murderer was reported, you know, a couple of days earlier for something that he should have been investigated for. I think it was what was it? Indecent exposure. Yeah. So and that seemed to. I know there's a process and people need to be investigated, but this man, his job was to stop people doing exactly things like that. So it perhaps that I think there is an argument for that. You know, we're still looking at the argument of institutional racism in the police force as well. These things do need to be looked at, and if it comes out that there isn't, then there needs to be questions asked about the people who run the police and what they're allowing and what they think is appropriate force, because I thought on Saturday it was disproportionate force. Obviously I wasn't there and I can just go by the people I've seen talking about their experiences, but these are people who basically get paid to look after other people, and for them to be.
My feeling was that when we saw the age of the police men there, they were very, very young. Some of them looked as though they might even be probationers, you know, and you think, is this a wise group to put in control of this very, very sensitive event? And their behaviour, I thought, and you just, what on earth do they think they're going to achieve here? And what on earth is going through their head? I mean, I'm not talking about the rights and the wrongs of the things. I'm just talking, as you were, about the look of the thing. So then who possibly thought that response was appropriate in the circumstances? I'm going to come back to you, Laura, because this is very much an issue for the two ladies today. But Sam, your thoughts on the whole thing?
Yeah, I think we really need to. It's very easy to talk about the police officers on the ground, and I appreciate that not everybody makes the right decisions, but I think the real questions are about the operational, organizational side of it, the people who you didn't see in the TV. Unfortunately, it's going to be these people on the ground who sort of take the flak for it. But, you know, it's about who made that decision to send them in heavy-handed and to try and push. See, there's lots of comments about social distancing and about COVID, but that's a lot of the photographs you're seeing on the news are after the people at the vigil were all pushed together by the police officers. So you've got to ask when from an operational point of view, did it make sense to kettle people who are at a vigil during a pandemic, and then to sort of confront them directly, especially when you see similar scenes of was it football or rugby, the celebrations in Scotland, where there are literally thousands of men marching through the streets and just being like shepherded along nicely by the police. But so that's all right, but this isn't for some reason. So it is really worrying. Like I said, like Laura says, it's good to ask the questions about whether groups are, you know, institutionally misogynist or not. It's definitely always worth asking that question and finding concrete answers. I just think it's such a terrible sequence of events tied into a horrific tragedy, and just on the last episode of this show, on the after show, I was making half jokes about, oh, I'm going to go and lock my chickens up now and I'm going to get murdered. because actually that's the reality of living as a woman in this country. And what I really hope we get is people starting to listen to women when they tell them they're afraid, and stop talking over us, and actually ask what you can do to make it better, rather than just shrugging it off.
At the risk of talking over you, Sam, please forgive me. I mean, do you think that this is Britain's Me Too moment? Do you think that it's similar in its nature? And if so, do you think? I mean, what it's been saying is that society is misogynist, and that it's that we need to address at its very root cause. And do you see it having any effect, and what do we need to do to make it have an effect?
Yeah, what I've been really encouraged about over the last week is hearing men speak up and saying it's not a women's issue, it's a society issue. It's about institutional misogyny in society and a patriarchal system which hurts men as much as it hurts women. You know, the fact is that men are more likely to commit suicide, men are more likely to be the victim of murder, all of those things, and it all stem from the same cultural poisons that the things we're complaining about here stem from the fact that, you know, you've got big boys don't cry, and you've got to be a man, and you put that woman in her place, and she's ultimately your property, so you better make sure she's doing what you tell her to do. And you've got to get out there and earn the money to keep the household going. Those are all just terrible, poisonous, unhelpful concepts that we just need to start educating out of society as soon as possible.
Laura, one of the things about the education being the answer is that, in fact, what it said on Question Time on the radio was I thought was the point well made, that it isn't about teaching people right and wrong about this. Sort of the people who do these things know they're doing wrong. That sort of they've already been educated. They've just chosen to ignore that education. And sort of so what the gentleman said was that, and it was a man mind, he said we need to be aware of the limitations of education in this situation. I mean, what's your thought on that? Do you think we can educate society out of these, or do you think it needs more active, strange word, policing of proper attitudes towards women?
Well, I think education, and as I was about to say it, I've just seen Vonnie pop up saying the same thing. Education's a good place to start. It really is. That education then needs to be put into practice. We need people in positions of influence to display the behaviors that we want our children to display. We need people that our children look up to be talking about these things. We need it not to just be grassroots people. We need everybody singing from the same hymn sheet. If we can get in early enough and speak to children about respect and about treating each other equally, and no one's better than anybody else. I mean, these are ideas that have been around for centuries, so it is going to take a long time to deconstruct that. And I think we are making a good start. And as much as I don't want to take anything away from the remorse everyone's feeling about Sarah Everard, this has sparked something in people. You know, people are now starting to talk. People are starting to realize, oh God, those things that happened to me weren't okay. And that, again, that is a good place to go as well. Just getting everybody talking about it and just going, right, this is not okay. But you said earlier on, John, that you're going to let the women speak because this is not a man's issue. This is absolutely a man's issue. I can't stop you behaving the way you behave. It's up to you to stop behaving the way you behave, you know, and understanding that your behaviors have huge impact on women. Not you per se, John, but
Just very under attack. Well, let's let the men speak and hear what they've got. They've got to say. By the way, I've got a screen to my left here with all your comments. Thank you so much for those positive and constructive and balanced comments. They're so welcome, and Sam will be no doubt taking us through them in the after show. I hope so anyway. She's in charge of that. Let's see what the men say. Paul.
About the whole thing. I was so shaken by the whole thing. Like I was shaken by the murder, and then I was thinking, okay, the Met have done something pretty bad here. You know, they've allowed this person allegedly to murder someone after finishing his shift after he flashed someone weeks previously. If you look back into the record of the Met, anytime they're accused of anything, it appears that they don't really get prosecuted for it. It's very rare. There seems to be a culture where they are looking after each other and looking after their own. So we've got this situation as well. If you type in Met officer sexual assault, this isn't the first thing that comes up. You know, you would think it would be. This isn't necessarily a sexual assault. We don't know what happened. We know it was a murder, and we don't know exactly who did it, but we suspect. Anyway, if you look into that, this has been happening for a number of years now, where Met officers have been accused of sexual assault. Some of them get prosecuted, most of them don't. And this seems to be a systemic problem. And you know me, I always go after systems rather than individuals. And I think what a lot of people want to do is say, look, this is just one bad egg. This is just one person. And, and it could have happened to... it doesn't matter whether they were in the police, they were in the Met or whatever. This person could have done that anyway, they could have been in a different job, and it's just every now and then there's a bad person. There seems to be something institutionally wrong in that police force, and they went out and showed it, didn't they? They went out and showed it. They were like, what do we think of you women? Now, if it were me, I would be on the megaphone and I would have been saying, we've let you down. And the last thing we want is any of you to be in a situation where you feel unsafe. So you know what we're going to do? At the end of this, we'd like to offer people police escorts home. We'll walk home on the streets with you. We'll make sure that you're safe. And that would have went some way towards like making up for the perception around what the Met have done. But instead, they decided to body slam them. Now, was that for COVID? Was that to stop the spread of coronavirus? Because that's the excuse that they're using. They didn't body slam Rangers fans when they went out and celebrated on the streets. They didn't body slam, many other groups. They don't go into schools when, I'm teaching in a much more crowded area, inside rather than outside, and we're not socially distanced. But I'm half expecting a police, person to come in and body slam me just to make sure that they body slam the COVID out of me, because that appears to be what they were doing, because those women were kneeling down peacefully and were grabbed and some of the excuses have been like, it looks really bad because there's 5 of us doing it. I do know all about that because I work in a school where sometimes these things have to happen. However, they didn't have to get hold of them. They weren't posing a danger other than perhaps spreading coronavirus. Now, you don't body slam coronavirus out of people. I don't know what else I can say around that. It seems totally ludicrous to me the way they went on.
Thank you, Paul. Stuart, I had a question there, and I just glanced at Anthony Riley's comment that empathy would have been much better than violence, and sort of just agreeing with you. And I've completely forgotten the question I was going to ask you, Stuart. So just please forgive this. What's your take on all this?
It's an important time that people actually start to not just listen to women, but actually hear what's going on and take that on board. Some of the stuff I've seen, the arguments against the whole situation, where that crowd wasn't COVID safe, and if you believe that, have a look at schools. That's gonna shake your world. And other people have said the police were just doing their job. And I don't think people realise that part of, a police officer's job is to, consider the effects of your actions. They didn't really take on board that, that there was feelings involved in what those actions would do. It shows that policing as it is, where somebody just tells you what to do and you go and do it, is, inflexible. It's not going to give you the results you want. You want people to feel safe, to be the protectors. And what they've done is made people feel more unsafe in this situation. I think it's going to cause a situation now where more women will feel, less inclined to go to a police officer to speak up about, the dangerous situations that they're in.
Absolutely. Laura, last word. I want a word, please, to direct us to the future.
Oh, come on. You're going to leave that on my doorstep. Okay, I guess we just have to be more considerate. We have to look at things from all perspectives before we make decisions and before we take any actions. I saw the word consent pop up there. I didn't read the comment, but that word, consent, okay? If you don't get consent for something, don't do it. Some men think a lot of things is just banter, but that banter can have serious impact on those women later on in life. You might not think you've done anything wrong, you might not intentionally, but consent. Please get consent. Let's keep the conversations going. As upsetting and just emotionally exhausting as they are, they need to come out because they've been kept silent for far too long. It isn't the fault of the woman if something happens to them. You should not feel shame. You should not feel embarrassed. This was done to you. Tell people what is happening in our society. Let's stop misogyny. We're all involved in the campaign to make misogyny a hate crime. Maybe we should start one that says make patriarchy a hate crime, because it damages so many people. Like Samantha said, it's a structural issue in our whole society. We need to be mindful of that, and we need to not just lay blame at one door. We need to not to label people as victims and heroes, and start thinking about things in a universal sense with more empathy, I guess.
God bless you all. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you, Laura, for leading on that very difficult subject. And I think the only other thing we've got to say is that thank you for not going off into extremes as well. I thought it was a measured series of comments, balanced and fair. Thank you so much for that. But most of all, we just need to pass on our deep sympathy and sadness to the family of Sarah. When you get to my age, you think, how the hell do you cope with the loss of your daughter? How the hell do you cope with the death of a child? It's sort of, we're talking about these things that are important to us, but my God, so love to all the family. So sorry. Right. Other questions? Jake Ratcliffe, this government would never make patriarchy a hate crime, or they'd all be in prison. That, Jake, is the comment of the month, mate. Well done to you. Absolutely brilliant. Sort of a bon mot, if ever there was one. Okay. We talked so long about this, I knew we would. We just got time for two questions. I'm going to lead off with Samantha. 3 UK government LGBT advisors have quit with a comment about ignorant ministers. What on earth's going on there? I mean, sort of, you just despair. Tell us all about it, Sam, and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, so the government has been talking about banning conversion therapy for a long time and not doing it. I was surprised to see this come up, actually, because I had only been seeing the debate as like a passerby. kind of this week, and I assumed there was a vote on banning conversion therapy because like loads of MPs were coming out and saying I support a ban on conversion therapy. So I thought, oh, this is great, we're getting a ban on conversion therapy. No, we haven't. We got a Westminster Hall debate on it because it's still not being banned, and it obviously needs to be banned. I just can't believe that we're still in a society which does that. And I have it's not the same, but we have a similar issue within the autistic community, where people think that autistic people can be cured, and they do horrendous, inhumane and dangerous things to autistic people to try and cure them. And it just blows my mind that we're still in a society where people think that somebody's sexuality or somebody's neurodiversity can be cured, and we don't see that this is just part of the full spectrum of the glorious diversity of humankind, and it's to be embraced. So basically, yeah, we've got these advisors who were with the government, and they've actually come away from the government so that they can actively criticize the government in not banning conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is a therapy whereby you try and make somebody who is gay not gay anymore. Just replying to one of the comments that's on there. And again, it's all tied up in the patriarchy, as Paul says over on YouTube. It's just such an archaic way of thinking. I can't get over that. But unfortunately, we are in a situation where we've got quite an extreme far-right conservative government, and we've got a situation where trans kids can't get access to hormone puberty blockers anymore because they've been ruled unethical. There's nothing more unethical than forcing somebody to go through the irreversible lifelong effects of puberty that they don't want. And these are the real challenges that we need a government that's got the fortitude to stand up to. Unfortunately, we don't have that, because that's not what our government's about. It's not about protecting people and looking after people. It's about throwing people to the wolves and seeing which one survives the longest.
Thank you. I mean, Paul, Sam's there basically answered the second question, the question I was going to ask you, which is sort of, what's wrong with the government? I mean, is it because is it a deeply homophobic government that they're just pretending otherwise? Is it a deeply conservative government that just daren't make these necessary changes, or one that believes that we ought to have them, or is Sanchez throws people for the wolves? Sort of, what's going on in the government's head to have got themselves into this position over this issue?
I think people need to understand what conservatives are. Like, conservatives are people who don't believe in change. Like, they want to conserve things how they are. And, change comes from elsewhere other than conservatives. Conservatives have change forced upon them and sometimes come reluctantly into the future. So, if they believe in, fundamental Christian values that were made up in, I don't know what year they decided that gay people were a problem in Christianity. I don't know when that was, but I don't think it was as long ago as people think. To be honest, I think it was a much more recent thing. But they would have wanted to conserve those British values, those kind of Victorian values, and every single change has come with a fight back. So let's look at when gay people were starting to get recognised a little bit more. Section 28, don't promote homosexuality in schools. What they meant is don't admit that they exist in schools, and that had an absolute horrendous impact on loads of gay people. And that is what they want. They want things to stay the same. They don't want things to change. Now, the people who were on this panel, they had an incredibly low bar for acceptance. They described Boris Johnson, a man who described gay people as tank-topped bum boys, as an ally of the LGBT plus community. If he's an ally, if he's your friend, what's your enemy going to be like? Well, your enemy's going to be like Liz Truss, talking about how scandalous it is that, like, we import cheese or something like that. Like these people are neither forward-thinking, they're not clever, they are just... Like, they just want to hark back to an age that never existed, where for them, these problems didn't exist. It was just like, you know, you just had a man and a woman and that's it. It's nice and simple for them. That's what they want. These situations never really existed in reality. And that is what a conservative is. They don't want change. So if you think you want acceptance for people, they will have to be dragged kicking and screaming to do that. And half the Labour Party are quite conservative as well, socially conservative as well. You know, you've got like Blue Labour who have very, very socially conservative views about immigration and about LGBT rights and stuff like that. It is the position of social conservatism. That's what it is. So if we have a conservative government, don't be surprised if they don't want things to get better for certain groups of people.
Stuart, what confuses me about what Paul has said is that when you look at the roots of the Conservative Party, and please forgive me, people, because I am going to stereotype to a certain extent, but there's a truth in what I say. When you look at Eton and places like that, when you look at the Church of England, these bolsters of society, homosexuality has for some considerable time been running rife through these institutions. And sort of, so do you not find some kind of strange contrast between what the Tories are saying and what many of them are doing? And sort of, how is it that this body of people, so many of whom have either engaged in homosexual activity at some time in their life or who are themselves just gay, should then be so hostile towards the gay community? And I find it such a strange thing to come to terms with. Have you any answer to that?
I don't find it out of character. You know, when I think about a conservative politician, you know, I hear them say one thing and do another, and that's across the board. They'll say that they're allies of the LGBTQ community, and then actively work against them. They'll say that they'll support key workers, and then they'll actively, you know, throw them to the wolves. You know,
Sorry, I'm interrupting you, Stuart. They'll say they're going to help the red wall constituencies, and then they take more than they're giving them. Carry on, please forgive me.
You know, I don't think often for a conservative politician, it's all to do with, you know, the content or the material at hand. It's the way that they react with it. You know, clearly there's going to be, you know, gay and trans members of the Conservative Party. We know this is going to be a fact. You know, and they should be inclined to helping those people, but they're not, because they're quite happy to say one thing, feel like that's the job done, and do another. Move on to the next, say one thing, move on to the next thing. It's about the makeup of their, you know, character as much as it is about their morality for me.
One of the things I always got across about church is that I went to church as a child. And you sang things, take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. And it was only later that I realized that they were all just singing and going home and carrying on as normal. And I was a silly idiot. I thought, oh my golly, that's very hard, isn't it? Sort of sharing your wealth, giving away your wealth and helping people with your money. Sort of, what a hard thing to ask of people. And nobody ever told me that. You just say it. You don't need to actually do it. Laura, last comment on this. It's very difficult to say anything but sort of outrage. I mean, sort of, where do you see us going? Because the government will just ignore these people. Where do you think is going from here on Conservative? I'm asking you all about the future. Sort of, I hope we've got your crystal ball out there tonight to tell us, where do we go from here on this conversation?
Well, I mean, the fact that these people have resigned is a good start. They're highlighting an issue, but Dear me, I genuinely couldn't believe it. I didn't know conversion therapy was still a thing. I couldn't believe it. I was really shocked. I mean, I'm wondering if more people didn't know it was a thing, and if we can highlight that this is still happening. And not only is it happening, the government are in favour of it and will not get rid of it. It's just, I mean, it's pure and simple discrimination, isn't it? So we need every single person who's ever been on a pride march, any single person who cares about other people, especially the LGBT community, to get out and protest. Yeah, you might get a £10,000 fine because we're not allowed to protest, but you can do it online. You can shout, you can disagree. We need to be doing this at a grassroots level. We need to change the minds of, well, not even change the minds of the people, just awaken them to what's actually happening, because I think most people would think that conversion therapy is a form of abuse and it shouldn't be happening. They just maybe don't know about it.
One of the things I note, Laura, is that in fact out there in normal society, in fact, people are really cool with the fact that their neighbours are gay. It really is not an issue in normal society, and most normal people will regard conversion therapy, if they knew the details, as mental and physical torture. So basically, they're trying to torture people out of being gay. And of course, all they do is they just torture them into repressing it and doing immense mental damage to them.
I wonder if we could torture Boris Johnson out of being a insert expletive here.
Sort of, no, but it'd be fun. Okay, I'm going to get in so much trouble for that. I'm sorry, everybody. It just popped out there. Righty-ho. And the last topic of the day is, thank you, everybody, for commenting on that, is just the councils, the funding crisis facing councils at the moment. I cannot, sort of the normal Durham County Council haters are not on tonight. So sort of, I can't help but point out that, in fact, wise husbanding of their revenues and capital budgets means that, in fact, Durham County Council is not in a huge funding crisis at the moment. Sort of, so that's good. We're still looking after your money properly, but there's massive problems all across the country in many councils. Stuart, tell us all about it.
Once again, we've got a situation where councils are struggling to keep going with money. We've got nearly 25, was it, that could go bankrupt at any moment. That's how close to the edge some of these councils are. And this is just with them doing their very basic, lowest level of legal duty towards their constituents. So that's really dangerous for all those people that live there. Those councils need proper funding, and it's been a problem for going on over a decade now. We've just been cut and savaged and scarred, and DCC have done a relatively good job, I think, at staying afloat, but I think it's come at the cost of the staff. I think the vast majority of the burden is put on these councils' employees, as they're told to do more with less. And we're losing services, across the board. We want more libraries, but we're told that we don't have any more money to have more libraries. We want more services. We want, youth centres. And, unless the government's going to step up and actually start funding things properly, we're going to have nought in a few years' time. This isn't sustainable. Even if DCC is doing well now, what will it be like in another 10 years of being, savaged and scarred? The council is scarred.
I mean, one of the problems is that at government level, local council, local government is not a protected part of the budget. So, they come to set the budget and they say, well, we can't take anything off there and we're not taking anything off there. And they've got that built-in increase built in, and it's where are we going to find the cuts? And every time they just come to local government, and you're right, the word savage they heard. It says, Sam, how are things at town and parish level?
Well, again, because Durham County Council is being very kind to us, we are struggling, but the government it always used to be the case that there was a requirement for unitary authority, so that's Durham County Council, to give a certain amount of money to town and parish councils, and they took away the requirement. So a lot of town and parish councils don't get any support from the unitary authorities, but we still do in County Durham, which is very nice. It does mean that if the gets a bit of to and fro between town councils and Durham County Council, they remind us, we give you all this money and we don't have to. And that came up when we were talking in depth about double taxation recently. I think that the county ended up saying, well, if we're going to review the whole situation, then you might end up with a lot less money than you currently enjoy. So yeah, it is. The thing is, with town and parish councils, we have a lot less responsibility. We've got a lot less budget. So we are looking after the flower beds and looking after and cutting very small parts of grass and so on and so forth. In Shildon, we are lucky to have a small workforce which help us deal with perhaps emergency things that it would take Durham County Council quite a lot longer to get to. And I think that's valuable. Not everybody agrees with me. That's the state of politics. So yeah, it is really tight. But again, managing what you've got in the most sensible way you can is a real advantage. One thing that we came across recently was the town council became a beneficiary. Basically, a local charity went bust years and years and years ago, and they couldn't find anybody to give the money to. So it ended up coming to us for the benefit of the town. So we've been able to start a small grants system where we work with the local food bank. And if somebody needs £100 for a fridge, 50 quid for a van to move their very small amount of belongings into social rented accommodation, we can help them with that. So that's really, really good and very rewarding at the moment. You don't have to have a lot of money to make a big change, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you very much indeed. And I would agree, most parish council services are discretionary as well. They're not statutory. And these things are just so important for the mental well-being of the community. People don't understand how important walking out and having nice, pretty flower beds it is to you. Sort of, they would have us living in this awful grey world, people. Right, Paul. Everybody, they've done polls on this, and everybody accepts that the government has slaughtered council finances, and that it is the government that has been putting up council tax. The government's been saying you can put it up so much, and then they've been taking away money, so they've got to put it up so much. People accept that, but they still get furious with the council about council tax. Can you explain this to us? Why are people so angry at Durham County Council about a council tax that, in fact, has been hiked upon it by the Conservative government when people actually know this to be the case?
Okay, so the people who do polls tend to be quite politically engaged. The people who don't tend to do polls, maybe that there could be anyone. They might not be politically engaged. They might be. They might not be. But people who do polls are politically engaged, so they're more likely to know what's going on. Now, how can we expect everyone to know what's going on if we don't say it, if we aren't explicit with it? We see this rhetoric come out, and I think people have this tendency to believe politicians with a posh voice when they just say things with, oh, I'm going to say this with confidence. Like, look at Dominic Raab. Like, he's a moron. You know, he didn't know that Calais was important for trade, but he's just very confident. I'm very confident in what I say. And you're like, oh, he must be right. And I think that's part of what this is. So they'll say things like, oh, your council has done this, and they'll be like, that's terrible. What a terrible thing to have done. Because people don't have time to be politically engaged. Political engagement is a luxury in many cases. People without much money, if they're involved in politics, they're sacrificing something else. They're sacrificing time with their families. They're sacrificing time with their friends. They're sacrificing a lot of their lives to get politically active. People who really don't have much to do, it's very easy for them to get politically active. They can do it as part of their day job, and this is the problem that we have. Loads of people are doing other things, which is their right. They can go and do things because they have awful lives, like they have awful struggles and stuff. And why not enjoy yourself and switch off from politics so they're not as politically engaged? And someone comes along and tells them something, and we don't offer a strong enough counter narrative, and that's it. And then what you can do as well is, if someone's done 1,000 things wrong and someone's done one thing wrong, so this is how it always works. The Tories do awful things, and there are things that I think that I disagree with that the Labour Party do, and or left-wing people do sometimes. I don't think it's particularly left-wing to have like executives on massive salaries, for example. I would be cutting at that. I'd be looking at like totally changing the structure and having a grassroots worker involvement in decision making and people who know about their job making those decisions. I am not a real fan of managerialism, which seems to be how every county council in there is run. Now, the Tories would have, or the Lib Dems, or whoever it is who's your opposition, have absolutely no qualms in going, look at the Labour Party. Look at what they're doing. They're employing these people on massive salaries. They'll have no intention of changing that. No intention whatsoever, but they'll have a pop about that thing, and I'll agree with it because, and if I wasn't politically engaged, maybe I'd be like, you know what? They shouldn't have those people on there. So that one thing might be the last thing they've heard, and they'll go, right, and the 1,000 bad things that they've done, like cut all these services, years of austerity, what's going to happen if you keep on cutting councils? Well, they're going to run out of money. It's really, really obvious because councils can't make their own money, unlike governments, so they don't owe to themselves. And that's the situation we find ourselves in. People aren't being engaged with at their level. And I think one of the things that the Labour Party do really, really, really badly is they speak down to people. They say, we know what's best for you, and they don't ask. And I think this is this like this Fabian socialism aspect to the Labour Party. They will say, I know what's best for you, and then they will go and we will deliver this for you. Well, they might not want that. We need to engage at a more grassroots level. Things need to be coming from the bottom up rather than the top down.
Thank you so much, Paul. Wise words. Laura.
Are you going to ask me about our future again?
The words of the sage. I've run out of questions. Just it was basically that councils in England are facing a funding crisis. And I presume you're not going to say, well, it's tough, we haven't got the money. What?
No, I think actually this is, it kind of should, if people are reading the news, it should really highlight some really prevalent issues that we've had and also do wonders for Durham County Council. So Nottinghamshire apparently owe 30 million. Now, I can't see Nottinghamshire with all these Jetsons sort of type futuristic things. There's no reason for them to be in that much debt. They're just like getting their constituents to have services. Durham County Council, obviously, we're nowhere near in that amount of debt, which means that we have tried to manage the little money we get as best as we can. So we're not left in a position where we're begging for money and we have to cut more and more and more and more. And I think that narrative needs to be spread about because I know Durham County Council have been in for a lot of grief from the constituents up here. But actually, you can only do the best with what you're given. This highlights that. I'm a bit I'm disappointed. I'm not shocked that the newspapers are going in with these councils, they're in debt, like it's the council's fault, and highlighting how bad councils are doing, where in actual fact, the money comes from central government. Clearly, they're the ones who have failed. They're not giving enough if they've spent what they need to spend and it has gone over their budget. So I think we need to look into that. It's certainly a good argument for devolution. You know, if the government can't manage areas, then we should be left to manage it ourselves, because they're clearly not doing any good. So it's more, for me, it's more a story of a government failure than a county council failure.
Thank you so much for that answer. At the end, it boils down to money, and you hit the nail on the head for me. You can't spend money you haven't got. So you've got to cut your cloth. Just cut your suit your cloth. Overrun people, thank you for your patience. You know what happens now. We also do wave bye-bye. Nobody leaves. Everybody just stays. We chill. I can't stay until 11 tonight. I've got to go and look at a lamp post in the dark. Sort of such is the life of a counsellor. But sort of we will be coming back after No Pasaran, and Sam will be taking us through your wonderful comments. Thank you for listening to the debate. Wasn't it good tonight? These people are getting better and better, aren't they? So it's a joy just to sit and listen to them. So see you in 4 minutes' time. God bless you. Bye, everybody.
My name is Jack Atkins and I'm not afraid. And I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist, a dead one, they say, and around the rear we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. And around the rear we are. There'll be no Pasaran, no Pasaran, no Pasaran today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no Pasaran here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no Pasaran, no Pasaran, no Pasaran today. Fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no Pasaran here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those first. And around the rear we are. There'll be no Pasaran, no Pasaran, no Pasaran today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no passaran here. No passaran. No passaran. No passaran today. No passaran. No passaran. No passaran today. No passaran. No passaran. No passaran today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no passaran here today.
People sort of I went through. I do every time I finish I have this little break and I go and get myself something to drink, and every time I walk in and she's sat in the conservatory having watched you, and I said, aren't they brilliant? And she says, oh yes, it was very good today. And then I make me drink a cup of that. I couldn't get out tonight. She just wouldn't shut up. She said, so first of all, she was going mad about councils and council funding. And she's saying, and it's a political decision not to give us any money. They just want to keep us beggars so that we're beholden to them. It's all part of their power thing. And so I said, oh, yes, dear, well, thank you very much. That's very good. I got to go and get back to the show. And she says, and I'll tell you something. She says, she started getting cross about Saturday. In the end, I was walking away saying, yes, love. Oh, yes. So she's still talking in there. And sort of, well done, you. Anyway.
You've become a carry-on character, John. I was expecting you to start going, oh, and she said this. It's like they're watching a carry-on film.
Infamy. They've all got it in for me. This is where I hand over to Sam and and try and keep my mouth shut and not say anything provocative. Sam, your show.
I'm going to start with my moment of the week, part 2. So, those of you who have watched this show for a while will know that I have chickens. I think it's very socialist to keep chickens, by the way, and everybody should do it, but that's beside the point. So obviously I've got a lot of these hanging around, types of eggs you wouldn't get in a shop because they, slightly more brown on one part than another. They get thrown in the bin. But now I've got these ones too. Look at that. Isn't that cool? So I rescued a chicken from somebody's back garden.
Stole, I think, is what it is.
I tried to give her back, but I couldn't find her owner. It just so happens she's a fancy chicken that lays bright white eggs. So
fluorescent white eggs, as far as I can see.
So that's that's when you've been living through a pandemic for a year, that's the type of thing that really gets you excited.
Excited. Oh no.
Excited.
Sorry. Sorry.
Oh dear. Anyway. Mark Rattigan says we could do with a national debate on what conservatism is and what it stands for. It's fox hunting, grammar schools, unfettered capitalism, privatisation of public services, austerity for the poor, anti-workers unions, social protections and rights. They believe in a society based on me. Labour believe in a society based on we. And that is profound and true. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Labour Party and the Conservative Party are based on two different conceptions of equality. The Conservative Party believe that equality requires that everybody is just subject to the same laws, and if some people end up with better outcomes than others. You know, that's not the business of the state to meddle with, which kind of sounds okay on a first reading, but when you realize that means that disabled people who are people who suffer a worse lot in their life through no fault of their own because they're of a different ethnicity or another marginalized characteristic like sexuality, they just get left to deal with it themselves because the Conservatives think it's none of their business to sort that out. And the Labour Party and sort of the left-wing reading of equality is that sometimes the state needs to step in to bring people to the same level of equality, and that's why you get things like welfare rights and benefits and things like things that we don't have anymore, like Sure Start and the education maintenance allowance, which were all about providing a legitimate, fair, level playing field for people.
See, Samantha, you need to watch a little bit more of our interviews in the Origins series. Just on that note, watch Paul O'Connell's and see what he thinks of state intervention and how actually he thinks socialism is not state intervention. It should be like empowering people to do that rather than like, because you're right about certain forms of labourism there. Labour Party does have a tendency to say, you want this, we shall give you it. And I think we need to move away from that if we want to serve people. Although all those things you mentioned were extremely good things. So I'm not arguing that, but it's this. I think we need to change the way we think about that. It's a very Fabian socialist kind of approach. Not what I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying what you slightly described there had sounded.
I think that's a debate for another day. I think I know what he thinks, and I think I've got some profound disagreements. Because if you're going to leave people, I think if you're going to leave people to emancipate themselves, then that becomes a far right non state interventionist viewpoint, and you can't expect people to do that if they've got no means to do it. Like you say, people are too busy working to engage with politics and community activism at the moment, and it's very easy for the state to say, well, they can help themselves if they want. Isn't a food bank a great thing? I give money to the food bank so they can do nice work.
No, it's not that. It's about educating people in order to organise in their workplaces and give power to workplaces, give power to communities and that kind of thing, and make sure everyone's active politically rather than that. That's the argument there. It's a fun one. We shall have it another time.
Syndicalism. So tell me, what is that? Not syndicalism?
Syndicalism. I don't know what syndicalism is. I don't know the posh words for things sometimes, John. But
so I don't know.
We call it.
I'm very happy to be wrong on that. Maybe somebody in the.
We call it.
I think when you sort of. It sounds very European, very French. Does that when you're giving power to people in sort of talking about cooperatives and things like that, and I wondered just whether you were sort of.
Well, I think the point is we don't know what it's going to look like. We don't really know what it's going to look like when it gets there, because it could look like all sorts of different things. Like if we want to transform the world's going to look quite different, and we don't know what it's going to look like.
I mean, I don't disagree. I'm just trying to learn. Stuart, you wanted to speak there. Sorry.
Yeah, we get dragged into these debates on, big ideologies when, the people we're trying to, emancipate and talk to, when we talk about equality and, equity, you need to break it down where it's a level like if everybody in the country needed a bicycle tomorrow, a Tory government would give everybody an identical bicycle that was, one size, identical across the board, and probably bought from one of Matt Hancock's mates, right? But a Labour government would make sure that there was bicycles for children and bicycles for disabled people and bicycles for everybody's height and, needs. That's the difference. And I don't think we really need to get dragged into how we have a workplace, revolution of democracy if we could just get these basic ideas that, you know, we need bicycles that fit everybody.
So the debate is really whether the state makes the bicycles or whether the people make the bicycles. But
People
yeah,
make
maybe.
bicycles.
I'll watch the thing and then I'll argue against it. As is my custom of actually reading the thing, I'm arguing against actually just making it up.
I think I might have done a slight injustice to him because I don't think you would disagree with what he was saying. I think I've maybe done an injustice.
Where is this available? I mean, obviously, anybody now needs to go and listen to this chappie and see what he said. Where can you find that, Paul?
Just on our YouTube channel. He's also coming. Funnily enough, Paul's coming on tomorrow to speak about James Connolly. We're doing an Irish Day special for St Patrick's Day. We've got Maeve is coming on, Tina McKay, who was on our show last week, and Paul O'Connell. And I'm going to sit there as the most English one on there out of people and listen to their stories of Irish socialism. So that should be really good. But Paul's is in the Origin series on our YouTube channel. Probably the easiest place to find it.
Need to listen to that. Just broadened my mind. Thank you so much. Sorry, Sam.
All right. Ronnie brings up the fact that with the future that has increasing automation, the only logical result is a society that has some kind of universal basic income. I think this is one of the best arguments for a universal basic income, because it's very clear that we are going to have increasing. We already have. If you look back, a lot of jobs now that are done by robots would have been done by people in factories, like in the 70s. And if you look at the Amazon warehouses that are big employers now, they've all been built with a view to being automated in the near future. So, like, those are not long-term jobs. Those are jobs that the employer are organizing to dispose of. So it does become a big question, you know, how are we going to achieve employment when there are just literally not as many jobs? And, you know, is the answer a universal basic income of some kind? I think it probably is. I think I've talked about this before, that it's within us to want to spend our time productively in some way, shape or form, whether that's paid employment, voluntary work, caring for somebody who you want to care for. You know, there's so many different things that people do with their lives that aren't going to work for money. And we probably do need to let people explore those things in their lives and stop chasing after like jobs that don't even exist. Anybody got any opinions on that?
Yeah, I talk to lots of people about universal basic income, and the consensus is that we could put it in place quite easily and transition the welfare system we have into a universal basic income one. But the real issues that we face are that universal basic income also needs, you know, a system of education to support it. You know, it needs a government that's going to recognise socially valuable jobs before that goes in. Otherwise, we've just, you know, replaced one welfare system that doesn't best suit us with another welfare system that isn't going to, you know, cover all the things we need it to do.
Yeah. Any other opinions?
Isn't it meant to be cheaper? Isn't it like the administration around it would actually mean it would be more cost effective? Then a lot of people would lose jobs in those systems, but maybe we could get them to do useful jobs rather than checking whether disabled people can walk across a room. Maybe.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that was always the thing, you know. I mean, I've had a lot of like carers allowance is pretty ruggedly policed, and I have used it's cost as much over the time of me having carers allowance for people to grill me and check me every year and to go through the reams of forms they asked me to produce than they've paid me in carer's allowance. Like, I can't imagine that that's not the case. And obviously, like you said, when you're talking about disability living allowance, personal dependence payment, those are there's so much admin. And then also on top of that, there are departments that are set up to try and catch people out and enforce people paying back overpayments and things. And yeah, we could get rid of all of that if we had a universal basic income, and also perhaps get rid of some of the horrific just the whole thing about disability benefits is horrendous at the moment. It begins from a position where you are guilty until proven disabled, and they also do not make it easy it should just, your doctor should be able to sign a form, but they can't. You've got to go to somebody else who's not medically qualified to make a judgment based on arbitrary things, like Stuart said about walking across the room. If you could physically put a piece of ham onto a piece of bread and then put another piece of bread on top of that, you can make a meal and you don't need any help with your nutrition. Like, that's the way it works. Yes, Stuart?
Just when you said walking across the room, I've been looking at some of the forms that people are doing. It's no longer about walking across the room. It's if you can just travel across the room. So
Right.
they now consider people who are, using wheelchairs and other, means of mobility, that's good enough, and that's good enough for them to be able to do. It's terrible.
Yeah. We have a live question from my friend Chris Hood. With nearly 50 days to go till the county elections, what are the panel's predictions? Go on then, John. What's going to happen at the county council election? Are you going to get re-elected?
I think
Yes, of course he is. Daft not to elect you.
Labour is in trouble. Labour is significantly in trouble. You've asked the wrong person here, because I could talk till the end of the show about this. We just need to face that fact. I think the first thing is that the government is 10 points ahead in the polls and extending that all the time. The people out there, they do not want to know about how the government has mishandled the virus, and they turn on anybody who actually tries to say that. The government, they believe that it's been a very difficult thing, and in fact the government's done very well under the circumstances, and now look how brilliantly they're rolling out the virus. And they're not saying that it's no use that we say it's the NHS that's rolling out the virus, not the government.
The vaccine, although their virus rollout at the beginning of the pandemic was absolutely flawless. It was one of the world-beating vaccine, a virus rollout that was world-beating at the beginning of all this pandemic. No one spread the virus better than the UK.
And then against that, we've got really strong opposition, motivated and exceptionally, particularly in County Durham, which is just dog whistle politics, just saying just all the things to get people angry with the county council, and sort of misrepresenting individuals and bodies. And I do have a bad feeling about it, and what I worry about is not my own particular seats, though that is in a very I'm in a very conservative ward. But the fact is that if I go, it will be nothing if we lose our Labour-controlled county council. People will rarely know if that happens, and my feeling is that we are in significant danger of that happening. And it's like a rolling stone, and how if you stand in front of it, it'll just crush you. So how do I feel about the elections? and I haven't looked to see what people are saying about what I'm saying, but I am very, very worried indeed at this point in time. We haven't even started. We haven't even declared the election yet. It's running against us. Now, at the end of the day, will people see sense and put the cross where it is in their benefits to put the cross? And you need to not overreact sort of to a dozen very active people on social media. Maybe out there's this vast fund of sense amongst the electorate, and I hope I'm wrong. But that's my view. So I'm obviously not despondent and I'm working out crazy. But the fact of the matter is that I'm not sanguine at all.
I think that's my worry as well. So for the last 6 years, I've been engaged with my community and trying to work out how to make things better and learning all the time about how to change things and how to get things done. And like in the last 2 months, there's people sprouted up out of nowhere, making promises they can't possibly keep, talking about stuff they've got absolutely no clue about. And it just really winds me up because people are coming along and saying, oh, what a refreshing outlook. It's not a refreshing outlook to be wrong. That's driving me mad. Unfortunately, you don't find out people have given you impossible promises until after the election and they can't do what they've said they're going to do, and that by that time it's too late and you're stuck with them for 4 years. So I really do hope that we manage to get our message across and that we get a good result. And in Bishop Auckland constituency, we have got some amazing new candidates that have never stood for election at that level before. Loads of energy, loads of enthusiasm, already deeply embedded in their communities. So I'm very positive about them. But like you say, John, I have never taken a single vote for granted. You definitely can't take any votes for granted in this climate. No seat is a safe seat. And anybody out there who is a Labour supporter or activist, we really do need you to help us get those leaflets through the doors and talk to people on the phone. I hope that, being that we are campaigning during a pandemic, the Labour Party is in a better position than others because we've got quite a lot of data to work with in terms of how we target communications and things that other groups probably don't have. But it's not over till it's over. It's not over till we'll all be there at the count. Well, we probably won't be there at the count. We don't even know how it's going to be counted yet. So that'll be interesting to find out how the count works.
How are things going in Chiltern?
I'm having a good time. I'm working hard, and what I do stick on the internet got a positive response. I think, I don't think it's going to be easy. I've got very big shoes to fill in Chiltern. If you were ever a Labour voter, and there's distrust in politics in general. I find by a lot of people there's, for the most part, apathy towards what lots of people do, and that's really sad. So I do hope that hard work kind of shines through, and that people respect that there are people like Sam and others in their communities working really hard, and whether you agree with them politically or not, that you respect them for the amount of effort and work and care and love that they put into their communities, and maybe that'll be enough.
What about Wingate, Paul and Laura?
I reckon, well, the amount of work that John Higgins has done here should see him absolutely just not a problem whatsoever. I think it's difficult for everyone across all of our constituency and County Durham actually, because a bit like Brexit, people are looking for somebody to blame. And when things aren't going right, it's very easy to go, well, the council has done now. And I think there's a lack of personal accountability. Like if I see one more person whinging about potholes and they're not reporting it, it's like county councillors aren't all knowing. They don't have, they don't have a crystal ball. They can't see all potholes at all times. Report it and they'll fix it. Just stuff like that. I think people are angry. People have had a really crap time over the last 18 months. It's been awful. People feel like shit. People want to blame someone. So they'll see somebody who's been supposedly working for them and go, right, don't you anymore because nothing's working. When in actual fact, you like the county council we've got at the minute, like we said earlier with the spending, you couldn't have done a better job with what you've been given. You've done the best with the tools you've been given. Evidently much better than a lot of councils up and down the country. You don't owe 30 million. But yeah, I think I'm hoping Wingate will be completely safe because John, he does this thing where he sends me updates every week of what's been happening. And it's just like, bloody hell. Like, how much stuff are you doing? It's constant. He's always working. He's always walking around the village. He's really trying hard. He's changed so much. He's got a load of stuff in place for the next few weeks that'll really make a big difference to people here as well. People have asked for certain things and they're getting done. So yeah, I'm hopeful that the people of Wingate and beyond will just go, yeah, let's vote you back in because you're mint.
People of
If
Wingate
John doesn't
aren't
get
stupid.
in here, I'll be devastated.
People of Wingate aren't stupid. So
No,
when
they're
you've got when you've got like someone coming in who's never been here before, who comes in to take a couple of photos of some potholes, that
on near a
it's just
pit wheel that he didn't help build.
Yeah, look at this. It's like, I'm here at the pit wheel that like the parish council put in, and that everyone's very proud of in Wingate, or the traffic calming around the co-op when he was like, I got these bollards put in. He didn't. He's just a Lib Dem who made up all sorts of ridiculous lies, pretended he was doing X, Y, and Z, and he wasn't doing anything at all. And the people of Wingate aren't stupid. That's why they returned such a massive vote. So we don't take it for granted, but like John doesn't take it for granted, and he's an absolutely brilliant county councillor, and I'm very proud to have him as our county councillor. And I would vote for him whether he was standing for the Monster Raven Looney Party or anything, And I'm not saying I've got to vote for Labour because I'm in the Labour Party, but he's brilliant, and I would vote for him anyway. So any Wingate people watching, just vote for John Higgins. It's a very sensible thing to do. Throughout the county, I'm not so confident about Labour's chances. I think nationally the polls are looking really, really bad. I think Starmer is really, I don't know what he intends to inspire. He wanted to exude confidence and competence, but he's come across like, I don't know. We've got a terrible shower upstairs where we describe it as being breathed on by, like, when the water's dripping on your face, it's like being breathed on by a hot cat. The breath from hot cat breath. It's just like a sort of really rubbish dribbly mist, and that's what I'm reminded of sometimes when I see Keir Starmer's performance as Labour leader. A few people have contacted me about whether I'm going for the Hartlepool seat. I don't think I would get it. After.
Well, not after that. No.
But yeah.
What I hope people will understand as a logical necessity, as a philosopher, is that if you think it's wrong to only vote for a candidate because of their political party, if you think that's wrong, if you think blindly voting for one political party, no matter who it is wrong, then you must also think that refusing to vote for somebody who's a good candidate just because of the political party they're in is wrong. And I just hope people will actually look at their candidates and not just the badge that they've got on. And like Paul was saying before, we've got some people who are doing genuinely good in their community, and it would just be such a shame not to give them the tools they are asking for to do even more good in the community. It's good to see Graham Marsh here. Hi, Graham. You're a bit late.
Really late to the
I'm
party.
going against you. Where's my kebab? It's all right. I've ordered pizza today. We'll let you off with that. Jake, Ratcliffe.
Didn't John want to be done before 11 o'clock? I feel sorry for him. He's got to go out.
I've got to go and look at a lamp post. Sort of. What they've done is they've replaced all the lamp posts on systematically on my estates, and this is the estate. They've sort of what they've done is they've chosen this time, first of all, to leave the stumps all over, so people aren't sort of saying, "My God, they've got new shiny lamp posts." They're all saying, "What are all these stumps being left for?" And but the other thing is that sort of course, just every now and again they put up one in a slightly different place. And this is a complaint that it's ruining somebody's quality of life because it's just shining into their rooms all the time. So, and of course, I can't offer any sensible comment unless I go out at the dead of night and sort of have a look and see how it's affecting this poor family. So yes, I'll leave you and say goodbye if that's okay, and I'll jump in my car and. Go and have a look at the lamppost. Now, I'm not trying to bring the party to an end. But
we can bring the party.
Thanks very much.
I don't think you can leave, John, because if you leave, we lose a square and we'll all end up in different places on the screen. So we will wind this up just now. But just before we do, there was a comment earlier on when we were talking about conversion therapy for Kath Conroy. Paying tribute to Alan Turing. I think it is important to recognise his heroic struggle. I think we're too much when we're talking about war. We look at the soldiers, and of course soldiers do a very important thing in war, but people like Alan Turing who were there cracking the codes and doing things which were just as vital to the war effort. And what did we do to repay him? He was subject to horrific conversion therapy, sterilized to start trying to stop him from exercising his gay identity, and also historically accepted as being an autistic man as well. Shut up, Siri. My phone's talking to me. Historically accepted as being an autistic man as well. So it's always a shame to see a historic gay war hero treated as badly as he is, and I think it's always important to recognise what happened to him and say, we are sorry, actually, Alan, and we hope that people who come after you won't be treated in such a horrific way.
Can I just be very, very rude, because there's just been two fabulous comments. First of all, Graham Marsh, should we vote for the person or the party? I think that's one hell of a discussion topic, and I'm going to put it on the poll next week. But the other one is Mark Lungley. His comment. Have you seen his comment, Sam, about if we crash and burn in the elections, what will happen to the Labour Party? I think that's a question worth considering as well. That is this last chance saloon for Starmer? It's very interesting. You don't think so, Paul?
No, I think he's doing what he's meant to be doing. I do. I think that this has not been about getting elected. They really have written off 2024, as far as I've heard. And I don't think this was about. I don't think Starmer's tenure as Labour leader has been about making sure that we're electable, because we've gone back to Miliband or a little bit to the right of that. It's about making sure that those socialist ideas are never at the forefront again. in my view.
Very interesting. Mark Lungley, just thank you for that comment. Sort of time will tell, won't it? Sorry, Sam.
It's all right.
You're winding
On
up.
that bombshell, we are going to end. Da, da, da. Doop, 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 doop. So let's just say goodbye, everybody. Bye. Give everybody a wave.
Bye. Thank you.
Keep the red flag flying here.